And welcome to Your Questions Answered. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture. Unfortunately, on my own today, so I thought I'd answer some of your burning wrestling questions on Twitter, X, at Adam Wilbourn, at WhatCulture WWE for all of us. But before I get into that, though, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube, where we do daily wrestling podcasts, where we review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. AEW Dynamite, AEW Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events. We have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup that we complete. The bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. As I said, though, just by myself today because of wacky summer, so I thought I'd answer some of your burning wrestling questions. Let's start with this one from DMD on Twitter, who says, who else do you feel like you could use a hard restart like the one they gave Bronson Reed a few weeks ago? Cheers for the question, DMD. It's interesting this because me and Hamflet did a video just the other day about wrestlers dying for something new, and we talked about the likes of Brody King on there, Bailey, obviously. And then afterwards, and it doesn't really count because I think he's still off with a knee injury, if I'm not mistaken, but one name popped into my head, and I thought, I really should have mentioned him on that list, and that is Wardlow. What is going on with him right now? I'm not going to speculate as to why he's off telly, because I believe he's injured, and even if he isn't, it's not my business. But they really had something with Wardlow, and he got very unfortunate that obviously some of the major moments in his career were kind of overshadowed by stuff. I'm talking, of course, of his big win over MJF, and then MJF has his issues within the company and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, the sort of stop-start booking of Wardlow, of you felt like when he finally got out from being MJF's lackey, he was going to go on to bigger and better things. And he did. He did win titles and stuff in AEW, but I don't know whether it has to be a move to WWE for Wardlow to give him that, you know, kind of reset that he clearly needs, or whether or not when he does eventually, fingers crossed, come back from injury, what you do with him, because what is his goal here? Because at the end of the day, MJF's going to be in and around the title picture, so you could always lean on that sort of thing. That title picture could, of course, be the world title, or it could be the American Championship, International Championship, but you've got a whole plethora of belts there for Wardlow, and like airport test stuff, unquestionably that man passes it with flying colours, but I don't know what AEW needs to do, because he is someone who it kind of felt got a little bit lost in the shuffle. He had that feud with Samoa Joe, and I don't know what you do with him to re-establish him, apart from just have him destroy people, because he's clearly very good at that sort of thing. But I am hopeful that there will be something there for Wardlow when he eventually comes back. If not, a jump to WWE, because you just know with the talk, especially recently, about like Phoenix and Penta heading to WWE, there's this excitement amongst WWE fans. I know Hamflet thinks that they could do some good stuff. Sige even agrees that, you know, someone like Zero Miedo Penta in this catchphrase era could even do really well just because of that, let alone their in-ring skills. I'd be fascinated to see, a bit like we was talking on the news this morning, me and Andy, about Bobby Lashley in AEW, what Wardlow in WWE looks like. I have no idea on Wardlow's contract situation within AEW, but it feels right now like if you were to ask me the next, I'm not suggesting it's World Championship or bust for Wardlow, but like if I was going to name the next 5 AEW champions, I don't think he breaks into that conversation, does he? I mean, me and Sige have sat here before and talked about the fact that, you know, you got Swerve and Danielson obviously coming up at All In. Hangman Page is obviously always going to be in and around that title picture. Kenny Omega, when he returns, is Kazuchika Okada going to get in that conversation? Sige, as I mentioned, talked a lot about Darby Allin finally winning a world title. And then, if we're talking like people like Bobby Lashley coming in, you can't kind of disregard that. He needs to be elevated right to the very top immediately. And then what are we doing with, you know, your Adam Coles when he eventually comes back, or the talent that you've built up over the year? I'm still campaigning for Mark Briscoe to be AEW World Champion. I know he's got that Ring of Honor World title, but there's levels to this game. There's another question I saw that someone sent in that I want to talk about how certain shows are perceived. And I just think Mark Briscoe, yes, Ring of Honor World Champion is great, especially considering his history, obviously, with the promotion, but AEW World Champion. He's got the chops for it, and he certainly can work that way. But let me know either in the comments or on X, at WhatCulture WWE, at Adam Wilbourn, as I said, who you think could really do with a bit of a reset, or maybe even a bit of a repackaging. I don't know. Vexatome says, if temperature was determined by heat a wrestler got, how hot would Dom be? Hotter than the surface of the sun, I'd say. He is, it's weird to say this, one of the best heels in wrestling right now. Now, I'm not suggesting that means that he should be in a heel position for a major world title going forward, but you can't deny, and I think all of us sort of thought, okay, once he's had this feud with his dad, and he's had a bit of a run being one of the gits in the Judgment Day, what now? And look where we are. You know, look what has happened for Dominic Mysterio over the past year, 2 years, basically. He's just got this ball and really run with it. And I think this storyline with Rhea and Liv, it's, you know, the injuries have sort of worked in its favor. Not you ever wish an injury on someone, but yeah, Liv and Dom are probably the most despised couple in wrestling right now. People can't wait to see Rhea. I think people are more excited to see Rhea get her hands on Dom than they are about Rhea getting her hands on Liv, because we already sort of saw a little bit of that at SummerSlam. So I don't know where it goes post Bash in Berlin. Obviously, Liv will still have a title to defend. She's not defending that against Rhea in that mixed tag match. And yeah, he can work. There's no question about that now. I think initially some people thought, all right, well, Seth Rollins has dragged him to a decent match here, and he's worked with his dad at WrestleMania. That was incredible. The entrance obviously added to all of that, but what do you do after that? But look at the numbers he did as well when he moved to NXT for that brief run with the title over there. I don't know. I don't know whether eventually he holds a... He's not going to hold a world title, in my opinion, purely because of... I mean, look who the champions are right now and where that lineage is probably going to go from there. But you just had Logan Paul be United States champion for a bit, and he's a knobhead, so I wouldn't rule it out for someone like Dominic Mysterio. And I just... Maybe or maybe they didn't pipe in some booze initially, but there's no need for that anymore now. He is one of a limited number of people guaranteed to get a reaction. And it's, you know, I love MJF. He's my best friend, of course, and he's a sensational heel, but he's almost too good in that people are like, kind of like him, hence why they had to turn him heel, of course. So, yeah, in terms of getting a guaranteed heel reaction everywhere he goes, Dominic Mysterio is right up there for me, for the time being at least, and the facial hair only adds to it. A question I've sort of covered before, but I love talking about the bloodline, so I'm going to do it, and it's from a regular contributor, Eddie Zamhari. Eddie, thank you as always for the question. How long until Roman Reigns will go get help from the bloodline, and how do you do the reunion? Me and Hamflet are watering at the mouth for this eventually to happen, and the ball has started rolling. Obviously, Roman's back. He's just got his ass handed to him by the new bloodline, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, it feels like this is going to be the catalyst on the road to, one would assume, War Games. Him realizing, all right, I can beat up Solo, no problem, and even Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa to a certain extent if the numbers game doesn't catch up to me. Jacob Fatu is a whole different ball game, and that seems like a huge match for them down the road. I know they've talked about them sort of holding off on that for a while. And yes, they interacted on SmackDown, but there was no suggestion that, right, well, Roman's going to fight Jacob this week on SmackDown, for example. I think this has to be the catalyst, what happened on Friday, for Roman to realize, I can't do this on my own. And also, because I saw people saying this on Twitter, of like, why is no one going out and helping Roman? Why would they? Who in that locker room is going to look out and go, oh, poor Roman, he's just come back and those bellends are beating him up? He's pissed off everyone for what he did for years as the tribal chief. He's still the tribal chief. He's the good tribal chief now. But he has to try and get the band back together, which is arguably one of the hardest tasks he's ever had to do, other than when they tried to turn him babyface all those years ago, or make him a babyface, or just get people to react to him as if he is a babyface. I would do, personally, the Usos, obviously. I mean, technically, Jimmy never really betrayed him. He just sort of stuck with Solo when Roman disappeared after WrestleMania, and then obviously Solo took him out. So he'd arguably be the easiest one to get on board for a fight against this new bloodline. Jey Uso's fascinating because Jey Uso, look at the work that Jey Uso had to do when he moved to Monday Night Raw, got away from the bloodline, split from them anyway. He was clearly his own man at that point, but still, quite rightly, people on Raw were like, why should we trust you? Why should we be friends with you after everything you did or helped to do alongside Roman Reigns? So I'd have the Usos with Roman next. And Hamflett talks about yeet ad infinitum. So that's the sort of word of the day for those beauties. Then Sammy. Jey and Sammy, it might have to be a bit of a package deal, to be honest. Sammy always seeing the good in people, despite everything. Would be really, really interesting. And if you want to go, 5-on-5, if they're going to get, I don't know, a Hikuleo or whatever for the heel bloodline now on SmackDown, Roman Reigns, especially after what happened with the little nod he gave him at SummerSlam, Roman Reigns recruiting Cody as part of that babyface supergroup, new bloodline, revamped almost, I think could be great because down the road, probably Cody's facing Rock at next year's WrestleMania, who's probably the puppet master in all this. I mean, if The Rock wants to get involved in Survivor Series,
oh my God,
not going to hear any complaints from me. I don't know what Roman does at WrestleMania still. I can't decide in my mind whether a match with Solo or Jacob Fatu or what happens there. The big match is obviously Rock versus Roman. Maybe a couple of WrestleManias away, but there's that. There's Roman winning a world title as a babyface to a babyface reaction. I can't wait. I'm really excited. I think the Bloodline story is one of my favorite stories ever in wrestling. And I know there's parts that people don't like. And yes, if I was forced to sit down and watch it from beginning to end, I might be saying, we know what's going to happen here. Can we just skip through this? But the way it has grown as a storyline and sort of encompassed so much and been able to evolve, I think has been a real credit to the booking of Triple H, and I know Paul Heyman's been involved in it. And how does Paul Heyman factor into this return of Roman Reigns as well? That's also going to be great to see, but we'll have to watch and enjoy it as we head towards November, you would assume. Mr. Phoenix references Cody in his question. Extravagant jacket like Flair, over-the-top pyro like heel Edge, always in suits like Evolution, taunting opening promo line like heel Roman. What do you guys want to talk about? If Cody wasn't Cody, he'd be a heel booed out of the building as the biggest heel in WWE. Do you agree? Yes and no. Cody the person is obviously such a good guy in real life and on television that even, yes, if you put all those things as part of his character, he's still the most over person in wrestling right now, without question, and justified the wait that we had to have between WrestleMania 39 and WrestleMania 40, and the fact that he kept that momentum going speaks volumes as to what he did, what he can do, and why WWE have put that faith in him, in my opinion. However, my God, what a time we are going to live in when Cody eventually, and he will eventually, turns heel. I think, you're always looking like, this is great right now. What have we got for the rest of the year? What have we got for next year's WrestleMania? And then what have we got 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line? And that Cody heel run is going to be right up there with Roman Reigns' run as the tribal chief, in my opinion. I don't know how long he holds the world title for. Personally, if I'm there at WrestleMania, as much as I enjoy Cody, The Rock is my guy, has been my guy from day one. I'd like to see The Rock win the title from him, even if it's just temporarily or whatever, and you eventually have Cody dethrone Gunther, perhaps, and you do it with the World Heavyweight Championship instead, so you can have a bit more, not necessarily hot potato, but shorter reigns with that other title. But when Cody does eventually turn heel, it's going to feed families for decades. Yes, that merch check may not be as big as it is right now for Cody, but people are still going to be on board with the American Nightmare, whether he's a babyface or heel. And there's so many avenues you can go down. You know, people are already talking right now about Cody and Randy, but with someone with such history, not just in WWE, and if we're talking 2, 3 years, 4 years down the line, who knows what the landscape of AEW and WWE looks like in terms of people moving between companies. And Andy always says it's the most exciting thing because anything's possible when people move companies. Is that the thing that brings Kenny Omega to WWE? I'm not suggesting that he will ever necessarily leave AEW, but what on earth does that look like? But I know heel Cody Rhodes, under the stewardship of Triple H, I should say, under the old regime, God knows what that would have looked like or has looked like in the past. But yeah, I don't want it now. I don't want it before WrestleMania, but in the next year or so. And I think fans, because people are saying, oh, if a fan's going to turn on him. No, he's not John Cena, and that's nothing against John. It's the world we're living in right now. And I think it's just a really exciting time. And there's so many narrative possibilities, as Michael Sidgwick would say, going forward. Eric Vasquez has been in touch. Great first name. Eric says, hello, Adam. If you would, some of the biggest highs of year one with Eric. That's my son, not Mr. Vasquez, although we had a great time at WrestleMania. Cheers to you and the little fam. Thank you, Eric, for that. Yeah, it was my son's first birthday on Friday, hence why I wasn't here, and we celebrated it over the weekend. To narrow it down to the biggest highs is really tough for me. And sorry to go off on a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to answer this question because it's been a very special 12 months for me and Anna Louise, my wife, and Eric, and just the whole family, really. And I was thinking about this before I came on here, and I think it's simply the firsts. Well, first of all, getting Eric home from hospital, because we had a bit of an ordeal initially when he was born, with him going into special care, and shout out to the hospital special care unit, the QE's special care unit was unbelievable with their care for him. So we didn't get him home for, I think, 5 days after he was born. And, you know, my wife went through, I mean, the toughest labor I've ever heard from talking to other people. And, yeah, just, it was a real... a moment where I was in awe of Anna Louise with what she did for our family. But then, yeah, we get him home, and yes, you have the sleepless nights and what have you, although one of the great firsts we have was Eric sleeping through the night quite early on, to be perfectly honest. But it's everything, really. No matter how much you hear, and by the way, oh, that reminds me, shout out to Anthony Agogo, who has just announced today on Twitter he's going to have a child, which is fantastic news. I DM'd him about it earlier on. So happy for him. Yeah, you can hear me or the Dadleys or who any parents talk about what it's like until you experience it. It's, I mean, it's your own personal experience, really, isn't it? And, you know, from the first hiccups with Eric to, I mean, the first smile, every smile is great. Every time I go in every morning to pick him up out of his cot and smiles at me, and then, or I'm doing some stupid bollocks, surprise, surprise, to make him giggle. It's great. And then, yeah, you just, Kenny Omega, you check things off, whether it be first Halloween, which was a little bit early on. Don't forget he was only born in August of last year, so we just basically shoved him in a pumpkin. Wasn't happy about that. Dressed him as a ghost, dressed him as a skeleton. First Christmas, he had no bloody clue what was going on. This year's going to be more exciting, I think, because he's far more, you know, aware of everything. To just meeting people, whether it be his first sort of play date, or I distinctly remember when Anna Louise's parents came up, or a brother or a sister was there from the birth, actually, or like my parents, seeing my parents become grandparents was amazing. And yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, I've shown him the mighty Chesterfield. I've scared him, shouting, scoring and winning the league. But I'm excited to like take him to his first game. I'm excited. We took him to the beach for the first time a while back, and that was just magical. Taking him around to meet friends and family, or taking him to the farm, or taking him on walks. It's all the firsts, and it's not even the first time you do it. It's every time that you do it. And Sidge said this the other day, and he's spot on. You think, oh, God, I can't wait to have a break from the kid when you're really exhausted. And then the moment it happens, you can't wait to get home. But I want to say a massive thank you to everyone for their lovely messages throughout the year, really, because it has just been a fantastic first year being a father. Very excited to see what comes next, and it is mad. I was talking to Scott about this with his boy because they came along to their birthday party on Saturday. It's mad how fast it all goes, though, because I can't believe it's already been a year. But it's nice. My wife's making like a montage video of all the moments through his first year and just looking back, getting photos to hang up and stuff. It's been great. Anyway, we're here to talk about wrestling. I've gone off on a tangent there. I do apologize. Right, I saw this earlier as well. Ric Flair Andy, at Andy Ric Flair on Twitter, says, can you get me a Sweet Chin disco ticket? The lad I was traveling with, who was supposed to get them, has let me down, so left with no ticket and a spare all-in ticket. Twat! Him, not you. Well, Andy, I'm going to call you that because that makes more sense than Rick. I can't get you a ticket, but I can reassure you the fact that on the day, which is this coming Sunday, the day of All In, the day of the What Culture live show as well, whatculture.com/tickets, there will be tickets available on the door. Limited tickets nonetheless, but if you leave All In and head straight to Sweet Chin Disco, which is mere minutes away, it's just at the Crystal Club, just a few minutes away from Wembley, there will be tickets, limited tickets available on the door, and you can assume, people who've pre-ordered tickets or have promised they're going to come. Some of them might not turn up, so you may get lucky, Andy. I do hope you can join us. It's going to be an amazing night. I'm going to be hosting, which is amazing. More importantly, though, Max Caster's going to be doing a rap. He's going to be there. Prince Nana's going to be there. I think he might be doing a DJ set as well. And I keep checking my phone because the lovely Sam from Sweet Chin Disco is, staying on my case because he's terrified I'm going to say something I'm not supposed to. So I'll just say there may be other surprises on the night. And at the end of the day, if All In is just around the corner, who knows who might show up? I'm not promising anything, but it's going to be a great night immediately after All In. Do join us for that one. Like I say, limited tickets available on the door. Bad WWE Stats said, how would you have booked Mantar as WWE Champion? That's quite an easy one, so I'm just going to tackle that one right now. Beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, end the streak, and in the words of Hardcore Holly, give him the belt and beat everybody. Josh K, this is a far harder question. Who will walk out of Wembley World Champion? I think we'll see Bryan win for that feel-good moment. Side note, if this was WWE booking, I could totally see Swerve retaining. I can see both. I don't think I've ever been more conflicted in a title versus career match. You normally go, well, they're putting their career on the line, so it's their last chance, and then they win the title. But Bryan Danielson himself has said, once Birdie hits 7, he's calming it down, and this would be a hard stop. He's retiring from wrestling completely. That makes me lean slightly more towards Bryan Danielson, and I think you could do, Bryan Danielson holding the title for a while, and when he loses it, that doesn't mean his career's over, but he can switch to limited dates and deal with neck issues and what have you. Swerve, it's disappointing to see him lose the world title because I think he's been great for the past year in AEW. But he immediately will slip back into that feud with Hangman Page, which could well be the match at All Out that people are talking about. But on the day, I have no idea. I will bite on every single near fall in that match. I hope it's clean, whatever it is. I don't want shenanigans too much. Although Nigel McGuinness costing Bryan Danielson would be very funny. But probably not the best thing to do. So we'll wait and see on that one. Sam Brown says, what has been your favorite storyline feud in AEW? Easy one, that. CM Punk versus MJF. I loved the Hangman Kenny story. The tag match at Revolution, I've said before, I think is my favorite tag team title match of all time across all promotions. But yeah, it's MJF and Punk for me. Just a great story from beginning to end. Look at the the way it played out on television. Look at the way it was backed up by numbers. I'm not really someone who's that arsed about numbers and ratings and buy rates and what have you, but it just works so well. And yeah, it's tinged because I love seeing Punk in WWE, and I'm so excited to see what he's going to do over the next few years if they can keep him around, injuries and backstage stuff taken into account. But it was a glimpse of what Punk could do in AEW, and I know he did other stuff, obviously, but that was the peak moment for me in all of AEW. But I'm biased because MJF's my best friend. I'm not sure if I've mentioned that before. Zamzam Biryani Stan says, how would you book the family on the main roster and where would they go, Raw or SmackDown? Maybe this is rose-tinted glasses from me, but I think a stable could work on the main roster. Where you put them is a different question, because I read this and I thought Raw is the best place for them. More show, makes a lot of sense. Got a lot of bloodline noise going on in SmackDown. But then I thought, actually, it's already very busy there as well. Then again, depending on how the Judgment Day Street Trash goes, maybe there could be an opportunity coming up. But then you've also got Wyatt Six there, and I want American Made to do great stuff as well. So maybe it's SmackDown as well as that, because, and this is kind of me thinking in the current mindset, so take this as you will. Maybe it works. Tony D'Angelo is not going to fight Cody Rhodes for the world title anytime soon, as much as I would love to see it. But them coming up and kind of running roughshod for a while on SmackDown, whilst the Bloodline are busy with world title things. Tony D as United States champion, with the help of Stacks, Luca Crucifino, and the Riz. If you've no idea what I'm talking about, by the way, we do daily NXT preview and review podcasts. It's my favorite show of the week. It's my favorite thing to talk about. And it's such this great, weird bubble. It's the very much if you know of wrestling NXT. And it divides the WhatCulture office. That is all I'll say with regards to that. There was another question about the family that I saw. Mr. Waffle says, will Eric be attending Chase U when he's old enough, or is he already an honorary member of the family? Both can be true, Mr. Waffle. The plan, I think, is, good education for Eric. Then go to Chase U. Try not to get fired, because if you're unaware that Chase U, the university based in NXT, Andre Chase had a habit of sacking students, which I didn't realize is a thing you could do for a while. But then I think that place in the family will always be there for him. So, yeah, I think get the degree behind him and then go and learn a trade like the waste management business. That's the plan for Eric going forward. Charlie says, who's spookier, the Fiend, Uncle Howdy, or the Boogeyman? Now, it depends what you want to take from this. I don't do scary things. Why would you subject yourself to that if you don't want to? Outside of wrestling, that is. I think the thing is, I think if the Fiend was coming after me, there'd be a sort of weird acceptance of, oh, I'm going to die then, because the Fiend was such a character who was so all or nothing, and a terrifying presence. People forget, because of the issues that the booking had with the late, great Bray Wyatt, that first match, the SummerSlam match against Finn Balor, from the entrance through the match, through the fallout from it, was kind of perfect. Finn Balor was in the ideal position of like the sacrificial lamb who doesn't need to put up a good fight and nearly beat the Fiend, actually. He needed to be destroyed as he was. Uncle Howdy, I don't really know what Uncle Howdy is still. So, personally, I wouldn't want the Boogeyman coming after me, because Boogeyman ain't going to kill you, but he is going to make you eat worms, and that is the sort of thing that lives with you for the rest of your life. And I've met the Boogeyman at one of these fan conventions, and he is full gimmick, and all the love in the world for him for doing that. What else have we got here? Let's answer a few more questions. Dan Rogers says, how much would someone have to pay you to take 5 bearskin chops from Gunther? Is there enough money in the world? I am a pale man. I am a pale ginger man who bruises incredibly easily. So that would be effectively a permanent tattoo on my chest if I think I took... Because I remember, you may remember years and years and years ago, this is what, let's say 2018? Whatever the Rumble was where Shinsuke won it and Asuka, we did a live stream. It was probably one of the first live streams we did. And we had a punishment, if you remember. We all drew numbers for it. And whoever drew 27 had to take 27 chops from the rest of the people on the stream. And Muggins here was the one who drew that number. However, on the night, Adam Cleary either forgot to set his alarm or slept through his alarm and therefore was late to the stream, and so he took the punishment. And I still remember that man's chest days, if not weeks afterwards, and him talking to me about how it was painful to have a shower, and the bruise sort of changed colour on it. It's purple, then it's green and yellow. But I've been in attendance. We were lucky enough to have Walter in WCPW, and yeah, I remember seeing him chop people and hearing that noise, and I've been, lucky enough to see him do that in WWE as well. And I think finding out this lanky, specky twat from YouTube wants to take 5 chops from him, I think he'd put an extra bit of snap on there for me. So is there a number? I wonder if I'd do it like 100 grand for each chop. So I'm getting $500,000 at the end of it, but I have to get to the end, or maybe I can cash out. But I really don't want to do that, to be honest, mate. I really, really would rather, Dan, not have to take any chops from anyone ever again. Although I will say, when I was in charge of my mate Matt's stag do, we went out in Manchester and I dressed him up as, well, a variety of different outfits. But the last night he was Macho Man Randy Savage with all the tassels and stuff. And for some reason, alcohol may have been involved in all this. We ended up in a nightclub and I was showing people from the lads who were like, what do you mean you talk about wrestling for a living? I was showing them how to execute a correct chop. I can't do it. I've never wrestled a match in my life. But just in terms of, I've seen the stuff. I've seen that, oh, God. Reminds me of that video of Chris Van Vliet with, who was it? With Sean Spears and Tyler Breeze when he did that. Jesus. So, yeah, for some reason, I said, let's all chop. Me, I think it was. For some reason, the stag didn't take too many chops, but I ended up being stuck with that. Tom Forrester, who do you think the Wyatt Six will target next? They hinted at Dakota Kai. Not sure if injuries have put that on hold. I reckon they'll go after Judgment Day / Street Trash, given all the family betrayal that's gone on there. That's a good point. That could be an interesting one because I don't think they're going to jump over to SmackDown right now. So you kind of have to work within that raw pool of talent. Dakota Kai, I agree, isn't going to be back, unfortunately, for a month or two. So that's out of the picture. I'd be all right with, the Wyatt Six going after what's left of the Judgment Day after Rhea and Damien have kind of had their way with them. You don't need necessarily it to involve Liv too much. But, yeah, I enjoyed seeing the Wyatt Six in their first match. I was really pleasantly surprised by how that all went. Them beating up JD McDonough and the likes of Carlito would be fine. Don't want to do too much with Finn Balor, though, because a bit like when they went after Chad Gable and his gang, they kind of have to ruin you, and that doesn't work if you wanted to just go on to either just turned or you're just going on to something different, as Chad Gable and Finn Balor are. So I'll say the lackeys of Street Trash. Audie says, what is your dream NXT gimmick? I feel like they've had a few new prospects lately without that special kind of 2.0 flair. Any ideas on how to give them a boost? It's occupational gimmicks for me, unsurprisingly. I've really enjoyed the likes of Obafemi coming in and wrecking people. But that essence of 2.0 is, in fact, you know what? I'm not going to pick a wrestler, but I'm going to say job generator. Here we go. Random job / occupation generator. We'll do this and we'll see. Scientist. There you go. Any scientists? I think I've also mentioned a pilot in the past. I just think, and if there's ever a place, and I'm sure Simon Miller will agree with me on this one, if there's ever a place where occupational gimmicks could work, it is the weird and wonderful NXT. Because it just, as stupid as it is that Kiana James is a businesswoman as well as a wrestler, or, yes, the family, it's fun. And you can immediately attach things to that gimmick, whether it be weapons or a way of working, and it's one of those, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it in NXT, because you can change like that, either still whilst you're in NXT, I'm not doing any of that bollocks anymore, or just when you move up to the main roster, be established as someone who can go, but you can leave behind your bricklaying roots, something like that. But I think that's something they do need to return to, because it's really fun if you just don't take things too seriously or feel the need to point score on other promotions, to be honest. Christopher, when should any wrestling organization do another all-female PLE? Sooner rather than later, for me. We talk all the time about why aren't WWE doing another Evolution? Maybe it'll happen. It may even happen. Do you know what? And I'm not going to be the sort of person who says a lot of the time, because this company's doing this company's going to do this to counteract that. But AEW's women's division has always had great talent in there. It's getting more and more stacked now, obviously. But as to counteract to that, I could easily see WWE thinking, right, well, maybe even to tempt some others over, your Britt Bakers or whatever it may be, we'll showcase, we do put a lot in female talent. We do give them more than one match a week. Dynamite, I'm talking to you. So I'd love to see it. It's not going to be this year. They'd have made it more of a song and dance about it, which is unfortunate, because I think they did the first one to sort of try and counteract the whole Saudi stuff, understandably. I'd love to see an Evolution too. WWE has always had enough talent to be able to put it together, even more so now. And Andy and I were talking about Stephanie Vaquer and Julia coming in, and that sort of, they have to make space for them, and they could arguably be on the card as well. Why not have Raw, SmackDown, and NXT represented on that card? Have some title defenses, have Kalani Jordan defend the North American Championship, for example. And then you look, and you've still got, your Charlotte Flairs, your Becky Lynch's, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill. Like, you ain't going to struggle to, if you're going to do, like, especially with WWE now and Triple H doing more of these sort of shorter cards, 5-6 match cards, you aren't going to struggle. You wouldn't even necessarily, although I would love to see it nonetheless, you aren't even necessarily going to have to reach in your big bag of legends to pull it out of that. Like, you could have a sort of battle royal for a title shot down the road that you can have win by Julia or Stephanie Vaquer if you want, to showcase them. You can have the tag titles defended. You can have, like I say, the North American NXT title in the women's division, the women's NXT title, SmackDown Raw, and personal feuds as well. It doesn't always just have to be about belts. I hope we see one in 2025. But I wouldn't hold your breath, unfortunately. Exiled to Halifax says, how would you respond to MJF's recent comments directed at British wrestling media? I saw the things that he said to Cultaholic and Wrestle Talk, and I can understand where he's coming from, but obviously as the OTJ, the one true journalist in the game, I know he wasn't aiming that as me, and Max and I have had a lot of conversations about this separately. So... this is, I'm not going to get on a soapbox here about this, but I do think people do tend to misinterpret sometimes what we're trying to do here. Because yes, we're sensationalists, and yes, we may overreach, let's say, when it comes to YouTube thumbnails or titles or whatever. But that doesn't mean necessarily there is an edict from above that this week we have to be particularly harsh on AEW, or this week we have to be particularly biting when it comes to the criticism of WWE, or pick at certain things. We're trying to run a business here, ladies and gentlemen, and you know, you mentioned the Cultaholic and the Wrestle Talk guys, and we're all trying to do the same thing here, and we're all covering the same thing, so you want to try and get the most attention. If we could do it, every single one of us, not only here, just here at What Culture, but I guarantee the guys over at Cultaholic and Wrestle Talk and all the other wrestling media promotions, if we could just do the videos and say, big title change on Raw, and do numbers, we would do that. But this is the content game that we're in, and you don't have to like it. We don't like it a lot of the time, that we have to be so OTT with stuff. But it's attempting to get yourself noticed. But also, I can also see the flip side 100%. Like, if someone asked me and Sige, I think it was recently, whether or not they thought that, you know, would be concerned about wrestlers coming up to us about what we've said and done. And I'm not, because I like to think that they'd understand what we're trying to do here. And it's never directed at wrestlers who don't deserve it. But at the same time, I also get their frustration. Or if you're a fan of WWE or AEW and you're defensive of them, and you see us coming out and doing a Tony Khan shocked face with some headline that's a bit of a reach at best with regards to a story that's come out about Dynamite or Tony Khan or whatever it may be, or the Elite or WWE and Triple H or Cody, but like I say, that's unfortunately the game that we're in. But I can understand the frustrations, genuinely. Mike Quinn, if you could fantasy book any past performer / group in the modern day NXT, who would it be, and what would their first program be? Great question, that, Mike. And I'm going to guess Phil Chambers is hopefully going to be back helping me out on podcast tomorrow. I am going to say, if I can do anyone and anything, I'm going to indulge myself, and I'm booking Too Cool, because they were, alongside The Rock, one of the reasons why I got into wrestling. I loved them. I think they're very much a 2.0 kind of group. Who would they face is a good question, in terms of who would work. Is it Chase U? That could be a lot of fun. Or you do the opposite. You do Gallus. You do the fun, just let's have a good time of Scotty 2 Hotty, Grandmaster Sexay, and Rikishi versus, no offense to them, worked with Joe in the past, the grumpy Scottish bastards. Speaking of Joes, what's it going to be like when Joe Hendry, he's my pick for the Royal Rumble next year, not to win it, but he's, if you're WWE, right, and I don't know what the situation is with Joe and TNA and all that, but clearly it's a very good working relationship. Joe's getting to do a lot of stuff and training at the Performance Center, and getting referenced by Domino's. And I think he got a day named after him, I saw on social media this morning or something. Anyway, if you're WWE looking at that reaction on NXT, on that bubble of NXT, and the way that he's been booked so far, he's got to be one of the favorites for like a surprise Rumble spot. Because also, with those Rumble spots where you do surprises and you hope for a random return I always hope for a Scotty 2 Hotty every single year. There's also the danger that I'm only booking someone who a very niche group of people are a fan of and won't get that reaction on the night. Joe Hendry, Royal Rumble 2025, if he's not in there, unless it's to do with contract stuff with TNA, I would be astonished, because I think he's one of the most talked about men in wrestling right now. It's August. You're going to have to do a lot wrong that by January, or is it early February this year, because of the way that WrestleMania is. Anyway, regardless, You have to do a lot wrong for Joe Hendry not to get one of the biggest pops of the night in the Royal Rumble if you make him have a surprise. He's not going to win it. Could set up a match for him at WrestleMania. Just saying. Love Joe. Good friend. Great time from working together in WCPW. And yeah, it's just nice to see good things happen to good people who you've got a relationship with in the past. Well, I'll do final few more questions. Apologies if I've missed some of these out. Although me and Andy are going to do a wrestling Q&A because I know people have been crying out with it on our main channel, of course, because we've got rid of them off the news. So we are going to do more of these. So if I don't answer it here, I'll try and answer some more tomorrow as well. But also keep an eye out at WhatCulture WWE on X because we'll be probably pitching for that on there. I'll do a couple more. Michael Morris, do you think they are setting Chelsea Green... Sorry. Do you think they are setting Chelsea Green up as a title contender for Mania? She's been interacting a lot with Queen Nia and Tiffany Stratton. Could you see her beat Nia at Mania only to lose it to Tiffany at the next show? Oh, no. Not in that version of events, Michael. I think Tiffany cashes in on Nia. I think that just makes the most sense. But I can see some sort of redemption arc for Chelsea Green because everyone loves her, but the character she's playing, you don't think, well, there's a title winner right there. But she can go. Look at what she did in Money in the Bank. That woman can work. And whether or not this is them slowly putting out the breadcrumbs to lead you to, Chelsea Green could do something. I don't think she's winning the Royal Rumble. I don't think she's winning the title at Mania necessarily. But I certainly think there is a path to her having a big title challenge as a babyface because fans want to cheer her. She's great, but she plays this role so well right now. They're just working with what they've got. But I think you're right, Michael. I think the fact that they are not having to necessarily do anything, but having her in and around those sorts of people, it's always something you need to keep an eye on. Right. This question I meant to answer earlier, and there has been a few around this, so I'm going to try and tackle it. But as DJ Ringer said, this might be more of a Michael Hamflett question. Should wrestlers in universe be trying to get off the C shows, Rampage, Level Up, even ROH, with aspirations of making it to Dynamite, SmackDown, and Raw, like NXT Redemption characters were doing? In a way, yes. I don't think you necessarily want them saying, oh, I can't wait to get off this show and get onto the proper show. But yeah, it should be something that they're trying to do, and it does sometimes feel that people... doesn't feel like some people are Collision exclusive or whatever. It feels... or Rampage exclusive. It feels like they're just not perceived to be the right people for the big shows. And that's not true, because everyone deserves a shot on the bigger shows, on the bigger stage, if they've earned it. You know, it's funny, this is not really comparable, but look at the reaction, if you haven't seen it, Dante Chen got in NXT when he went from Level Up to being on regular NXT. There's something there. Like, maybe one person, maybe you could do it with one person of like, I've been plugging away here on Rampage, and I want to, you know, fight on Dynamite on Wednesday night, prime time. I wouldn't be necessarily against it, because it can only for so long be a proving ground for people, because sometimes it does feel, and we haven't done a Collision review today, just time issues and what have you, and with that Sigil Hamflett being here, sometimes Collision does feel a bit like dark in terms of people are just getting wins for the sake of it. There's not many matches you go into on those sort of shows going, don't see how this one goes, whereas on Dynamite it's far more unpredictable. But there's definitely a world in which you do a storyline where someone is desperate. Let's say Dynamite is going to their hometown in a few months' time and they say, I'm going to work as hard as I can to just get on that card. Because we know wrestlers want to get on the big cards. Talk about the history of people being like, I just want to get on the WrestleMania card. I don't care if I'm in a battle royal for 2 minutes. Just be able to say I was at a WrestleMania working is one thing. But I think there's scope for something like that there. But I don't know how much you can kind of acknowledge that fact without it seeming like, yeah, I don't really care about this show, and neither should you. So I saw a question just there. Videsh Singh, who should win Bloodline Civil War? Team Roman or Team Solo? You would assume Team Roman, because the lineup I mentioned, Roman, the Usos, Sami and Cody, well, they can't lose, despite Jacob Fatu and potentially The Rock being on the other team. But does Solo's team need it a little bit more? I get it, and I give this a lot more leeway than other people about the sort of pretender to the throne being exposed as not the tribal chief, but there's only so long that you can do that until people go, you're kind of the job squad just pretending to be, you know, the biggest team in all of the rest of the Brothers of Destruction or whatever, you know. So, I don't know, but then would that ring as quite a blatant attempt? If Solo pins Roman, for example, is that just a real, well, we know what they're doing here, they're giving him that. Jacob Fatu could win any match for a team, because look at him. I'm going to save that. I'll come back to that in a few weeks or months' time, as closer we get to Survivor Series, because I think it's a great question in terms of how you use that match to set up, presumably, what's going forward into the Rumble and into, obviously, WrestleMania 41. Final question I will leave to the wonderful Frazier Cranium. If you could take any wrestler / tag team back in time with you to high school to be your pal and make you look awesome in front of the girl you fancied and the cool kids you're trying to impress, who would you pick, and why is it the Outrunners? Well, the Outrunners are definitely in that conversation, and I don't know their movements for All In. I'm crossing everything that they are heading over to the UK for this show, and if they are, here is an open invite. I'd love to interview you. If that's not possible, that's fine. I'd love to meet you. I'd certainly love to party with you at Sweet Chin Disco. But I love those two guys. Whether or not they'd overshadow me is the issue, because they are two pumped up dudes who might get distracted and forget what we're here for if I'm trying to impress the girls that I fancied at school who had no interest in me whatsoever. So I'm thinking Big E, because he's such a good dude and everyone likes Big E. MJF would be someone who, I mean, certainly put any high school bully in their place, wouldn't he? And I think I know who it would be, because you're right. It's not just about impressing the girl that I fancied. It's about being one of the cool kids. And who is the coolest team in all of wrestling right now? I'll tell you. It's not the Outrunners, as much as I love those guys. It's not the Bloodline either. It's not Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. It's Maximum Male Models, MXM. Those are two incredibly cool dudes. They would dress me appropriately. We would, for one reason or another, be the talk of Newbold Community School, where I went to school back in the day. And if they can't help me impress the cool kids and show off to the girl that I fancied, no one can. And if she's still not interested, I feel like they would have some sort of cutting remark that would make me feel a lot better about myself. But a great question, that, Frazier. Thank you again for that. And thank you for all of your questions. Apologies if I didn't get around to it today. But this was a lot of fun and a lot better than me just talking to myself about wrestling, as I have been doing throughout the day. You can check that out on the Raw preview and the SmackDown review, available right now wherever you get your podcasts from. WhatCulture Wrestling Podcast, if you want to subscribe and get more of this sort of bollocks. Normally there's other people. It's not just me doing this. But do join us for tomorrow as well, because we are going to be previewing NXT and reviewing tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. But for now, at WhatCulture WWE on X, at Adam Wilbourn for me. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon.